They are worried, and they really should be. What's kind of happened is that for a while, President Trump has been talking about taking Greenland. He kind of, signaled in lots of ways that he wanted to reestablish a kind of Monroe Doctrine. He talked about Canada. He talked about Greenland. He talked about Panama. But what happened over the weekend in Venezuela, that made it all very real. And then the fact that he followed that up by saying we absolutely have to have it is very concerning for the Danes. He also, just before Christmas, he appointed a special envoy to make it all happen, special envoy to Greenland. That happens to be the governor of Louisiana. That governor immediately said he volunteered for the post to make Greenland part of the U.S. Multiple officials have been, pushing this line. They're obviously pretty high after the success of the operation to take Maduro in Venezuela. Yes, the Danes are really concerned.
Is it a serious test of the NATO alliance? Will the alliance be strong enough to survive this, given the serious worry that we're hearing from Mette Frederiksen?
If this goes, so this all depends on how Donald Trump goes about this. It's clear that he wants to do it, but there are lots of ways in which he can do it. So the most extreme option is just a military takeover. That seems rather unlikely. It's completely doable. Obviously, the U.S. has a military force. It already has a base in Greenland, a military base. It's very lightly staffed. But it could definitely receive large numbers of troops quite quickly. And if the Americans wanted to do it, there's very little that the Danes or the rest of NATO can do about it. There are many other ways for this to be done, though, in terms of, this is an autonomous part of Denmark. There are only 57,000 Greenlanders. They could be persuaded, and they have the right to vote for independence. They could then be persuaded to vote to join the United States. How would that be done? 57,000 people. That doesn't take a huge amount of money. There are other sort of, less overt ways of doing this. I think the problem for NATO is that at some point, the Danes may want to kind of up the stakes, as they've begun to do by saying, as Frederiksen said, if America tries this, that's the end of NATO. So they may use this as kind of try and use it as leverage, and raise the stakes, suggest to Trump that unless he backs off, it's the end of NATO. The problem there is, how much is Donald Trump committed to NATO, first of all, and secondly, how willing and united are the rest of NATO to take the risk of having a direct confrontation with Trump when they are dependent on the United States for a reasonable solution that would ensure their security in Ukraine, and for more generally the nuclear umbrella that the US still provides via NATO to Europe. So the stakes are very, very high if it gets to confrontation, which is why I think that's highly unlikely.